everybody. It's Tony George from DocSports.com right there. That pretty looking guy right there. He's 50 years old this year for DocSports.com. And, of course, it is March Madness. And, of course, we have Sean Salisbury with us here. Sean, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, my man. How are you?
Pretty good. Before we get to the Texas-Oklahoma game, I know you do a drive time talk show down there in Houston. What was the comments on the show this morning about James Harden returning to town last night?
About what we expected. They gave up a lot of points. Harden triple-double.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? Most of it, Tony, I think the expectations, because they're playing with 8 guys, they've lost 13 in a row. Brooklyn's won 10 of their last 11. Coming in was just make sure they don't get to 140, right? You knew it wasn't going to be pretty. And Harden goes triple-double on him. The bigger argument was, when I say the bigger gripe, I think, from people was Tillman Fertitta already saying that he was going to retire James' jersey. And James hadn't even been out of town a month and a half yet. So that got fans a little chapped, with that. And, James said all the right things, I guess. But he's playing listen, he's playing great basketball. He's, doing everything. He's down, from the leading scorer in the league 3 years in a row to back to, making sure everybody's involved. His scoring average is down, but his play is as good as it's ever been. He's still turning it over, but he seems peaceful. But the fans here, they're kind of shut off to the Rockets now because they're just, they expect it's going to be a buy instead of sell at the trade deadline here. We don't expect a handful of these guys to be here, but it's tough sledding. But, there's going to be those guys that never like Harden. There's going to be those guys that love him. And the bottom line is, whether you like him or not, he's a great player. And he put up the triple-double and put a stamp on it last night. And at some point, the timing of the retirement jersey talk, I think, irritated people. But we didn't spend a lot of time on it because, when you're getting your ass kicked, you don't like to spend a lot of time on it. And that's 13 in a row, so it's not good. They need this All-Star break.
Yeah, Brooklyn Nets, first half line last night. I was all over that. And one interesting thing about James Harden is, and they've won, 11 or 12 straight up there in Brooklyn, or 10 out of their last 11.
10 out of 11, right, yeah.
Yeah, 10 out of their last 11. They've done a lot of that without Kevin Durant. And the one thing people don't realize about James Harden is he leads the NBA in assists at 11 a game. So he's distributing the ball well up there.
Yeah, Tony, think about how good he's been. 3 years in a row, he led the league in assists, and then 3 years in a row leads the league in scoring. And now he's back to lead the league in assists. So he's got great basketball IQ. Yeah, he does things. The way he exited here bothered people, but there's no mistaking what a great player he is. So we'll see how that continues. And you took the first half. I took the Brooklyn, the over and the spread last night. So even though we didn't talk about it, I took it and made it because that was about as big a guarantee as there was, especially without a deep bench and starters that are struggling for the Rockets.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, this game here tonight's not going to be that easy. Texas taking on Oklahoma, Big 12 action, the Red River War, basketball style here tonight. And Oklahoma at home laying 2 against Texas, total 143 here. I'll tell you what, Oklahoma, we talked about them over the weekend. They did get it done against Iowa State, or Texas. They did get it done against Iowa State. And Oklahoma here, losers of 3 in a row, Sean, straight up. They lost at Kansas State recently as well, 57-62, 1-5 against the spread their last 6. They're not in good form here. The last 5 games, Oklahoma's defense, too, allowing 76 points a game. That's a recipe for disaster when you're allowing more than you're scoring here. Last game was a thriller down in Austin, 80-79 back on January 26th there. Interesting thing about Texas in this game, then I'll turn it over to you. Texas reminds me of Big Brother, Dallas Mavericks. They can beat up on everybody good, but they can't win against good teams. They're 1-6, 1-6-1 against the spread, Sean, against teams with a 600 record or better. And on the other side of the coin, which makes this kind of a perplexing game to pick, the Sooners are 7-2 against the spread against teams with a better than 600 record here. Interesting game tonight. you've got about 77% of the money on Texas right now at one of my sportsbook buys, and 100% of money on the over 143.5 in this game. And bear in mind, Sean, Oklahoma is scoring 80 points per game at home this year.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm saying and the inconsistencies late of both teams, Tony, right? A little bothersome to me. And identical on the offensive and defensive end, they're pretty identical statistically as points scored and points defended. And you're looking at, man, wins 10 days ago, Oklahoma was in the top 10. They're sitting at, 16 now. So they've had a rough go, as you mentioned, the 3 in a row. I don't see how there's any way the under hits here. I'm taking the over in this one, too. I do like it. I think at some point, I think this is going to be racehorses up and down the court. I think this is going to be a track meet. I'm thinking both of them are going to be pushing in the low 80s. I wouldn't touch this game, I don't think, with a regular bet, but with the over, I like it. And I think it's time. Oklahoma's better than they've been playing. You know that. And it's time. Now, I don't think that Shaka Smart's ever won a tournament game, has he? I don't think he has at Texas, I'm talking about. And while this isn't the tournament, he has got to get his team peaking. Like another game we're going to talk about, the way Michigan State has started to play, Tony. When we started doing these videos, we're like, scratch our head, what the hell's wrong with Michigan State? Well, they've started to react a little bit, right? They've started to play a little bit better. But in this one, I expect both teams to play their best. I like this game's is very, very important, I think, momentum-wise and psychologically. A high-scoring game. I think Oklahoma's going to win it. I wouldn't touch it, but I'm taking the over. I think this is a game that's right around closer to 150 than it is 140.
I've got this power rated at 151. So that's what we call an overlay against the spread is around 7.5 or 8. Anytime you can get an overlay against the spread based on power ratings, and for those of you that don't play the home game, let's just do a typical side play. Say Team A is a 65 power rating and Team B they're playing is a 60. Well, the spread is 9 for Team A. Well, I have them rated as only laying 5. So that would be a 4-point overlay in favor of the underdog because they should be only getting 5, but you're getting them 9. Well, we do the same thing with the totals. We add up, we do last 5 games and last 10 games. And, you know, I talked about this yesterday. You need to look at stats and how teams are playing right here, right now. If your wife sent you to the grocery store to buy a head of lettuce, would you go over in the bargain bin where it's 3 weeks old, or would you get the fresh head that just came off the truck yesterday? You're going to get the fresh head of lettuce. You're going to take the look at the right here, right now statistics. I think both these teams can score a lot in this game. Oklahoma has scored a ton of points at home this year. I think it's going to be a back and forth game. And the other thing about this game that I like, and bear in mind the last time they played, it was 159 points. This game has a very high potential to get into overtime. This is going to be right down to the wire, and that's always something I look at is overtime game, you know, the potential for overtime. And Texas and Oklahoma both have been in a myriad of overtime games this year as well. So I agree with Sean. The official pick in this game is the over, 143 to 143.5. I don't think you need to worry about buying down the hook. I can see easily both teams at 75 plus here, Sean.
Yeah, and about that, with Oklahoma, Austin Reeves is the guy who gets their main score. I think they got to be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, diverse or a little bit more mix on offense if they're going to get, and they will, but they need to. And I was looking at a couple numbers, Tony, and I know you have a million of these, but you think about in the cover, the Longhorns, and I think you mentioned are 2-8-1 against the spread their last 11 games. But when you look at the over in 15 games, the last 15 Texas has played, 12 times they've hit the over. And the over has hit in all but 2 of Oklahoma's last 6 games. So if we're going with, as you said, follow the stats and what you see, I think I'm with you. Matter of fact, Tony, I would even bet this over if it was 145. I'm not comfortable in this game being closer to one, like you said. You've got it at 151. I think we're looking at one of those 77, 7. What is that? I mean, like 80 to 79 type games. I think it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. This may come down to a buzzer beater or overtime. If it goes to overtime, we're going to blow by the over. There's no question about it. But I think we're going to get it in regulation.
Yeah, this is going to be a great game to watch tonight, folks. There's a lot of conference tournament games going on. Be sure and take advantage of that free $60 advertisement there. Click the link in the description below. Get over to Docs and get yourself hooked up. We've got conference tournaments going on. I've got a big top play today in a conference tournament. And of course, 67% of our last 73 picks over there. So, utilize that link and get yourself hooked up on a very dangerous day in college basketball. It's so dangerous today, in my opinion. I only put out this one selection. That's where I'm just going all in on one bet instead of spreading around all over the place. There's going to be a lot of surprises. This game here, I don't think it'll be a surprise one way or the other. This is a coin flip ball game, but along with Sean Salisbury, we are officially on the over in the OU Texas game tonight. Enjoy the game, and be sure and tune into our other video today. We're talking about some Big Ten basketball as well.